So welcome everybody for this session of the 17th of September with Frank Saladis. I will just resume sharing. So the subject of today's value-driven project manager. So I will just present you in 10 minutes the suggested conduct. Then Frank will have 1 hour to present the subject, and we will have 10 minutes of Q&A at the end. And at the end, I will just give you the next info, the PDO code, and I will then you will have the possibility to rate the event. Just some conduct, so please mute your microphone. You can use your full name, so then it will be easier for us to know who to give the PDUs. You can turn your video on, and you can use the chat anytime to ask questions. So Frank say you want an interactive session, so do not hesitate to ask questions. You can as well contact the speaker or give your LinkedIn, so in order to network. And as you see, so this session is recorded. And according to that, so we will take a recording and distribute to you at the end of the session, but any use of AI bot is prohibited. So thank you for your understanding. Just a quick word about the PMI Germany chapter. So we are 5 regions with more than 25 local groups. We have 11,000 members of PMI in Germany, but only 4,000 registered to the chapter. So if you are not registered to the chapter, do not hesitate, because it's always good to be in touch and to be able to connect with other professionals. We have approximately 150 volunteers for all Germany. So as well, if you look for nice people to connect, feel free to join us. And just a little word about our local group Darmstadt. So whereas Darmstadt is basically 25 kilometers from Frankfurt, we are English-speaking community with 7 volunteers from 6 countries. And our purpose is to as well bring a bit knowledge about project management a bit beyond. So that's why we organize twice a month those online events. And as well, we have a roundtable in order to see each other in real, or as well to share tips or new job positions. So if you are in the area, feel free to join us. You can as well connect with us on our LinkedIn group, and we have more than 500 members. A few words about our speaker. So Frank, who is a PMI fellow, so we are really happy to have him here today to give this presentation. It's really an honor. So he's the author of more than 12 books, 200 articles about project management. He was the founder of International Project Management Day in 2004, which is celebrated worldwide. He's as well a trainer and a consultant, and he's known for his humor. And he was in 2006 Person of the Year, and with the PMI Fellow Award in 2013, and the Distinguished Contribution Award in 2015. So it's very hard to summarize all his experience, because he bring with him 40 years of experience in different companies such as AT&T, Cisco, and he was in the PMI leadership for the New York chapter. So we are really pleased to have him today. So give him a very warm welcome.
Well, thank you very much. Okay, as we get started with the presentation, just a couple of things. International Project Management Day began, some of you might be familiar with it. The PMI had Leadership Institute Master's Class. I think it's still running, although I haven't really heard much about it recently, but I'm pretty sure it's still in progress. But during the Leadership Institute Master's Class, which was an 18-month program, at the end of the program, when we were graduating, the professor had asked us as a final note after his presentation during the graduation. He said, "Go out and change the world." And that's kind of a tall order to go out there and change the world. And some people are actually pretty successful at that. But I gave that a lot of thought, and I kept thinking about project managers, what project managers do, and also I think most of you will agree that the majority of people out there that are not project managers have no idea what a project manager does. And it is a little bit of a challenge for project managers to be successful and to move forward and make things happen. I've often said that there is nothing that anyone uses every day that was not the result of a project. If you think about anything, the building that you work in, the laptops, smartphones, computers, highways, trains, buses, boats, planes, you name it, everything that everybody uses every day is the result of a project and a project team. But there really is no true acknowledgement that a project team actually was involved. I mean, most people, when they walk into a building, say a large building, maybe a skyscraper or an amazing building in a city, and they might look around and see all the architecture, but they're not ever going to say, "Wow, what an amazing project this was. I wonder who the project manager was." So the whole idea behind International Project Management Day was a day of recognition and acknowledgement of what project managers do. And a quote that I put together way back when I first started International Project Management Day was that you could see the value of project management in any skyline. Just think about that if we didn't have project managers and project teams, we wouldn't even have skylines. So it's just a day of recognition. It's the first Thursday of November every year. And I encourage a lot of PMI chapters have events on International Project Management Day. Even PMI Global will do some activities on International Project Management Day. And like I said, it's a day of recognition and acknowledgement to show that, project managers are really important, project teams are, and they produce many, many things all of the time, most of which people simply take for granted. So, kind of keep that in mind, put that on your calendar. And on International Project Management Day, send a note out via LinkedIn or your social media and just say thank you to project managers. If you're in a large organization, maybe you can have coffee and cake or some kind of brief recognition event to show project managers that they are appreciated. So just something to think about. So, okay, with that, we'll just move forward with the presentation. You go to the next slide. Okay, so now, by the way, the value of project management is still evolving. Okay, in fact, it's really gotten a lot of attention only in the last few years, where people were focusing on what we'll call outcome and impact of projects as opposed to output. If you think about all of the previous versions of the PMBOK guide, all the way up to the 6th edition, the emphasis was on inputs, tools, techniques, and outputs, okay, and producing a deliverable. In the last, I would say, 5 years or so, PMI started to focus more specifically on not the actual deliverable of the project, but more of the impact and outcome, what has changed as a result of the project. And that's where the value of project management comes in. And if you look at the slide here, it says organizations have turned to project management to deliver results consistently. Okay, so results. what has changed, what's different. That's what we're looking for, and project management provides a more consistent approach to do that. It says project management reduces costs, increases efficiencies, improves customer satisfaction. Yes, it can if it's done right, if we have the right team with the right project manager, the right leadership skills. We're definitely going to see an increase in stakeholder satisfaction and also a lot of benefits for the organization that's performing the project. Okay, and then of course, strong organization-wide commitment to project management. What that means is that we need our managerial folks, the leaders of the organization, the people that are making strategic decisions, have to see that connection of project management to the long-term business value. And you can see that PMI and a number of other organizations publish information about the competitive advantage that organizations have with a strong and consistent project management approach. Okay, next slide. Okay, now this was a quote that was provided by PMI in the Pulse of the Profession. Project management is no longer based on a per project approach with short-term projections. It is now becoming well aligned with the service provider's organizational strategies and business portfolios. Okay, that's really important statement that if you really think about portfolio management and the connection to project management, what we're doing is portfolio management is helping to ensure that organizations are selecting the right projects for the organization. Okay, we want to get away from projects that don't seem to have alignment with organizational strategies. We really want to make sure that we're picking the right projects for that organization. I'm going to say, I'm going to make an assumption here that most organizations do not have unlimited time, unlimited resources, unlimited money in order to produce, to manage projects. So we have to use a business portfolio type of process or project management portfolio process to make sure that we're working on the projects that are going to create the greatest amount of business value. And by doing that, we can sustain ourselves as an organization and keep growing and maintain a good position in terms of the competitive environment. Okay, next slide. Okay, now I've been looking at the definitions and information about what value-driven project management is, and some of this information is very recent. I've been adding and changing this presentation each time I do it as I look for more and more information about value. And it's worth actually reading this particular slide here. Value-driven project management is basically a mind shift. It is important for project managers to understand that traditional plan-driven or predictive project management is not the only way to manage a project, and there's a need for greater emphasis on producing value, not only at project completion, but during the life cycle of a project. Now, what we're talking about here, and I know some of you have agile backgrounds or adaptive backgrounds. My background is primarily predictive, or what you call a traditional project management. But regardless of adaptive or predictive, the one thing that we want to do, and if I focus on predictive for a minute, that we actually manage projects in the predictive approach through phases. And we should be asking ourselves, are we producing value by phase, as opposed to waiting until the end of the project to see if we actually did everything that was needed to be done? Okay, so I think that's pretty important that, and then we have to start asking ourselves, well, what does value mean? I mean, are we using our people correctly? Are the resources being used properly? Are we spending the money that we have properly? Are we using the resources the way we should be using them to maintain consistent output and quality that will lead us towards that value that we're looking for at the end of the project? So we need to have a more conscious effort and approach to the value that we're producing in each phase in the predictive approach. In the adaptive approach, the value is actually assessed incrementally or through iterations. And I think we can learn some lessons from that, that as we produce something, did we do it correctly? Did it produce the impact or the value that we were looking for? Even if we're not finished with the project, are we doing the things correctly, minimizing rework and things like that? That's pretty important as far as I'm concerned. Okay. The other part requires innovation and creative thinking, and an understanding of when predictive or adaptive approach is most appropriate. And then, of course, we have hybrid. Okay, we have some elements of predictive and adaptive, depending on the type of project that you're working on. I see the hybrid approach being done in a lot of research and development type projects, new product development, things like that, where there has to be a lot more flexibility up front in order to produce that item that they're looking for that's going to make a difference later on down the road. So we just have to have that open mind about it being predictive, adaptive, or something in between in that hybrid approach. Okay, next slide. Now, again, looking at the value-driven professional, okay, you'll see aligning actions, choices, behaviors with your core values. And that's the most important part of this is, your own core values. And this also kind of connects into ethics and so on. Are we doing the right thing? Okay. Are we treating the people the way they need to be treated? Are we addressing the things that are most important to an organization? Okay, it's about understanding what truly matters to you. Okay, does time matter to you? Does quality matter to you? Does working with people and making good relationships, does that matter to you? These are all values that you personally have and that would have an impact on the project. Okay, if we lean too much in one direction, and we're going to be unbalanced. So there's an awful lot of things we have to look at, but it all starts with your own personal values. What's important to you? Okay, for me, just as an example of personal value, okay, I live in New York City, and one of the things that I personally would never do is, it's part of my value system, is to not litter. I mean, I just think that it's a terrible thing for people to do that, and in my value system tells me don't ever do that. Okay, it's important for me to do the right thing for the community and so on. That's just one example of value that we have. There's many others, but think about the values that you have as an individual, and how does that impact the decisions and how you work with people on your projects. Okay, you see at the bottom it says we can achieve these values through mindful decision making and self-reflection. Okay, these are important things that, we have to make decisions every day. In fact, I read yesterday that the average person makes 38,000 decisions every single day. Okay, and most of those decisions are going to be based on your personal values. Next slide. Okay, so now when we talk about values and now value realization, now PMI, in the 6th edition PMBOK, and I'm not sure if it's still in the 7th, and I know the 8th is coming out soon, they talked about what we call benefits realization. And I think a lot of people don't really understand what that is, but benefits realization or value realization, pretty much the same thing. Okay, it's when the stakeholder actually is experiencing the benefits that were supposed to be produced at the end of a project or when they purchase a product. Okay, when it fulfills your specific need, the needs of the stakeholders, when they're satisfied that all of their needs have been addressed, that's when they perceive value. And if you look at it, operational efficiency, reducing costs, maybe improving safety in the organization. Of course, increasing revenue is certainly part of value, but it's so many other things. I mean, just think about the well-being of your organization's employees and things like that. Are we doing things that are improving and making things better and enhancing? That's when we perceive value. Okay, so you think about your stakeholders, and we'll show you something a little bit later on about the stakeholders. Since we're dealing with multiple stakeholders, all have different perceptions of what value is. Okay, and the bottom line is when we look at that impactful value, every project is a financial investment. And therefore, we want to make sure that we're making the right choices and producing value that is perceived by multiple types of stakeholders. Now, you will see at the bottom there, it says value realization strategy, how to drive customer success. This slide presentation, these are links to information that will give you a deeper understanding of things like value realization. So when you take a look at this presentation later on, if you want to click on that link, you will see more and more information about value realization, which is what we as project managers want to do. I mean, I think that's one of our ultimate goals is to realize the value not only for our organization, but for our customers and stakeholders. And this really, regardless if you are in the private sector or the not-for-profit sector or government sector, okay, value should be something that we should always be looking at. Next slide. Okay, actually, if you look at the bottom there, and this is really kind of that deeper dive into value, managing value realization. If we look at these steps, set clear value realization milestones. This is really important, okay? As you produce or go through your project life cycle, there should be points in time where you are checking to see if you are on track to produce value, okay? And these might be what we'll call interim milestones, aside from your scheduled milestones, where you're checking to see how the work is being done, who's doing the work, are we spending our resources wisely? These are the kinds of things that we want to do. So set these realization milestones. Okay, do a constant check on the product and service analysis, especially when you're getting near the end, when you're doing your final testing and things like that, before you hand it off to the customer. Make sure that it's all operating the way it's supposed to. Monitoring the engagement and product usage. Okay, after you have completed your project, are the customers using it? Are they satisfied with it? There might be a need for have someone actually look back and check with these folks to see if they're actually using that product. That would be an indication that they're getting value out of it. Okay, another thing would be feedback from customers to provide continuous product improvement. And this is an important one. And just, kind of this, like I said, I just looked at this like maybe a day or two ago. Acknowledge value realization. If you complete a project successfully and the customer is totally happy and see the value that has been provided to them, it's time to celebrate. Okay, I know we celebrate at the end of a successful project, but maybe we can tag on to that we have achieved a certain level of value, and have a celebration and acknowledge people for achieving that benefit that has been realized by your stakeholders. Okay, next slide. Okay, now I had mentioned this a little bit earlier. Are you values driven? And these are pretty good questions to ask yourself. How would it feel and look to make decisions based on your values? So you have to ask yourself, am I making decisions based on my personal values? Or are you being influenced by other things that kind of maybe conflict with your values? Are you making decisions that contradict with your values and missions? Okay, that's a tough one. I think that just about everyone is under pressure at some point in time to make a decision that they're forced into a decision that really does not align well with your personal values. How do you feel about that, and what can you do about it? And then the last item here, the underlying factors influence how you make decisions that are not aligned with your values. What are the situations that force you to make a decision that is not aligned with your values? And then how do you feel about that after that? Okay, my suggestion here is to try to avoid that and push back on it, because I think that if you make a decision that is against your values, it will come back to haunt you in terms of, why did I make that decision? It was definitely the wrong decision. And it could lead to some real serious consequences. So these are things that you need to think about in terms of being value driven. Is your personal values, okay, Is safety important? And if you're being asked to do something to make other people unsafe, would you continue to do that? These are the kinds of things that you really need to think about. Next slide. Okay, now I'm going to do this very quick here, and I think it's important. I call this the new project management fundamentals. It's a little bit different than any particular fundamentals course that you may be familiar with. And there's a series of things that we're going to talk about real quick here. But the first one is no matter what you do, things will go wrong. Okay, and you can put in the chat if you agree with that. In any particular project, at least in my experience, if something doesn't go well and we need to make some changes, we have to adapt, we have to fix, something like that. Someone the other day, I gave a presentation on risk management, and I brought this also during that session. No matter what you do, things will go wrong. And someone pushed back and said, well, that's not true. They don't go wrong. They just don't go according to plan. I kind of accepted that to some extent. There is a quote that says something like, the plan does not survive first contact with the enemy. Okay, plans are going to change. That doesn't necessarily mean that things went wrong. It's just that we're going to have to readjust our plan. But sometimes things do go wrong. People make mistakes. Something breaks down. So I would, I'd be curious about your thoughts on, do things go wrong? Henning says, Murphy is always playing games with us. Right. Now, Murphy said that anything that can go wrong will go wrong at the worst possible moment. And then there's O'Toole's corollary to Murphy's law, which says that Murphy was an optimist. Okay, and I learned that years and years ago when I first started to get into project management, and I think that that's somewhat true. Okay, if we can go to the next slide. It's like, okay, now the next one here is if you stay calm and break things down into pieces, you can manage many situations. I think that's really fundamental. Project management kind of relates to the work breakdown structure, but big things need to be broken down. And if we do that, we can hand them off and delegate and so on, and we can actually manage a lot of situations. Go ahead and move to the next. Okay, now there are common situations to expect. Go to the next. Keep going. Oversights, being forced to do stupid things. Now, I know some people say, what? But really think about the projects that you've worked on and people telling you what to do. In your experience, have you ever been asked to do something that you felt was really stupid? There's poor quality, direction changes, personnel issues. We have a conflict with people, don't always agree. And then when we have poor leadership, we're going to have threats of mutiny. These are all things that happen in projects. Now, this all comes from a book called The Art of Project Management by Scott Birkin. And I just really liked his approach. Was not what we'll call traditional project management. He was really basing it on his own experiences that these things do happen. Okay, next slide. Keep going. So this is important for all of us. Difficult times are learning opportunities. Take time to examine what happened and discuss preventive actions. Things are going to go wrong. Let's talk about it. Let's find ways to minimize them, prevent them from happening. Okay, and that way we can actually focus more on producing that value. This is another one that's really big, taking responsibility for a situation regardless who caused it. I've heard lots and lots of times people say, it's not my job. Well, whose job is it? I mean, the customer is unhappy. There's an issue that needs to be addressed. If you find out about it, then do something about it. It doesn't mean that you have to take responsibility to fix it, but take responsibility to find out how to fix it or who can fix it. Okay, let's be proactive with that. Now, that will be perceived as value from your customers when we have people that are very proactive and will take on a problem, even if it isn't in their particular job description. Another thing about negotiation skills, we need to work from people's interests, not their positions. Okay, when you take positions become immovable. It stops things from happening. So we need to kind of look for ways to understand what other people are thinking. I use a quote from Stephen Covey's book, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. He said, seek first to understand and then to be understood. And I think that that's still true in any situation. Let's find out what's going on without taking position. Let's try to get to the best solution possible. Okay, next one. Okay, clear lines of authority is very important, and pressure. Let's understand that in many cases, leaders can deal with pressure pretty well. Good, solid leaders can deal with pressure, but team members not necessarily. And help them deal with the pressures. Give them guidance, give them direction, give them support, so they can get their job done. We don't want to have a stressed out team that will actually maybe make mistakes and create some problems in producing value. Next slide. Okay, now real quick on this. I think you're all aware of this. Some of you are going to have a lot of, maybe know about a lot of this information. But at the strategic level of project management, sustain the business, enhance it, build it, grow it, increase business and market share. I put this in because I've been studying disaster recovery and business continuity recently, that your organization, regardless of what you do, should have some strategy to handle disasters and business continuity. And that is generally done through some type of a project management approach. And of course, improving performance, reducing costs, things like that from a business perspective. At the project level, a lot of you are familiar with the triple constraint: on time, within budget, according to scope, all that. But I added in the bottom, deliver value. Okay, so time, cost, and scope, pretty important. But I think that many of you would agree that even if you go over schedule and maybe even have to spend a little extra money, you can still have a successful project if you are producing value perceived by the customer. Okay, next item. You'll see that it's really about price-value equation. Value is the perceived benefits minus the perceived costs. So we really want to see greater benefit over the cost of doing things, okay? And if you think about value, most people, when they talk about value, never talk about price. They only talk about what they're going to get out of whatever the product or services that they have purchased. Next slide. Okay, now the personal value traits. Okay, all of us are probably good at something. In fact, really, really good at it. And I take a lesson from Tom Peters. He was a famous management consultant guru back in the 1980s and early 90s. And what he said was, quit doing less than excellent work. Okay. And if you look at the things that people do, we can't be excellent at everything, but people will associate you personally with something that you do extremely well. So the advice here is be excellent at that. Okay, that kind of helps you with your personal brand, which is really, really important. But we can't be excellent at everything. Find something that just differentiates you from other people and just be excellent at it. Okay, collaborate with others and always exchange knowledge. I make it a habit to post things on LinkedIn and share as much information as I can that I think will be helpful to people. I write a lot about leadership and things like that, risk management, working with people. I post leadership notes, anything that I think can help people to develop and enhance their career. That's what I'm going to do. This carrying the spirit of generosity. Share your notes, share your information. Okay. If you see people floundering, help them out. Give the information and don't worry about being taken advantage of. People will appreciate the fact that you are sharing information and helping everyone to succeed. It's really kind of associated with what we'll call servant leadership. The next slide. Now, I put together what I call the project manager value attributes. Okay, and if you think about all the things that you do, and this, of course, I think will relate to you very specifically. The professional, we're truthful, ethical, fair. Financial, that we're managing costs and we're trying to produce financial value. The aesthetic, quality, customer satisfaction. The social, we're going to build teams. We're going to establish strong relationships with our stakeholders. The political, that we're going to deal with conflict. We're going to create alliances. We're going to find ways, not just through ourselves, but through alliances with other people to influence, to get things done. And of course, to be a leader, motivate, build loyalty, create confidence, and things like that. These are what we call project manager value attributes. And ask yourselves about that. The professional, financial, aesthetic, social, political, and the leader. These are all parts of what project managers do. And if you kind of get back to what I said about International Project Management Day, most people don't see all of that. But we as project managers see this all the time, and we just need to keep doing it. Next slide. Okay, keep going. Okay, now thinking about why. Okay, this is really important. When it comes to value, we always have to ask ourselves, why are we doing this in the first place? We have that purpose. Make sure that we are spending money in the right places. Make sure that we have our resources in the right places and our best resources in our priority items. Okay, making sure that people understand the why motivates, it clarifies, it expands options, and it also encourages a lot of creative thinking. So ask that why question of yourself so that people can understand, we have purpose. Okay, next item. Okay, now Simon Sinek put together something called the Golden Circle. Okay, and real quick on that, you ask the question, why? What is your purpose? Why are we even in existence? Why is your organization in existence? How are the actions that we take helping us to support the why? And then what are the things that we actually do that we are beneficial to our stakeholders, our clients, customers, employees, and so on? Okay, and you'll see at the bottom the Golden Circle, Simon Sinek. You can click on there, and you can get a more deeper dive into what he had said about this Golden Circle. Next item. Okay, and this is the circle that Simon Sinek talked about, and you can see that on this link here. But why is clarity? How is the discipline, the strengths and items that we have that we can basically succeed with our mission? And consistency, basically what it is that we do. And I think that people really need to do that. And you can basically apply that at the project level. Why are we doing this project? How are we going to do the project? And what is it that we are actually going to produce in terms of value? That's really important. Next slide. Okay, project leadership. I'm going to talk a little bit about leadership. Next slide. Okay, and I think most of you are familiar with that, but I'm going to talk really quick about a power exchange. And these are important items. Okay, if you look at these items, information is the primary power source for successful project managers. Listen, learn, gather intelligence, share. Now that's, if you I think most of you are familiar with it. Many of you are probably PMPs or have some credential. That communication is essential. I mean, being a very, very good communicator is essential for a project manager. And a major part of communication happens to be listening. So are we a good listener? We need to listen to input from other people, gather that information. Okay, create and sustain high levels of value through people. How are we going to do that? We need to have strong leadership, communication, motivation, passion, create some excitement and engagement. And what's most important is that last item: a project leader's power alone yields no results until it is exchanged with the team. We have to have this exchange. The team has power that they can give to the leader, and the leader has power that they can transfer to the team. And we have this exchange, which creates momentum to move things forward. Next slide. Okay, this is just a quick example. A power exchange, the intentional, that's a key word, intentional transfer of information that boosts team member accountability and performance. It also adds to engagement. So exchange information, build up the energy of the team so that they can all move forward to get things done. And it takes a lot of strong leadership and a lot of energy to do that. Next slide. Okay, the power converters. You know, I'm from the U.S. I've been to 38 different countries. I've learned a lot about different cultures. And many of the things that I'm saying are probably more U.S. centric, but I think that they're kind of universal, and hopefully you're looking at it that way. But let's explain the game. You know, this is what we're going to do, and get everybody to understand what it is you're going to do. And the other thing that is instead of telling, ask for input. What do you think? Okay. Do you have any other ideas, any options that we can use in order to get through whatever the challenge that we have? Give your team the opportunity to perform. We don't really want to micromanage, but we will certainly support them. And again, that's where you get the servant leadership coming into play here. Uh, this to me is an important thing. And again, I learned this years ago. The planning is one thing, but you can plan too much. And why do I say that? Well, plans are going to change regardless of how much you plan. Things are going to change. There are going to be exceptions sometimes, but most of the time you have to plan. Your plan's going to change. It's the excellence in execution that is going to be the driving factor towards success in any particular project. And then, of course, acknowledge people for the work they do, and not just at the end of the project, during the project. If you see somebody doing something exceptional, take the time to give them a sincere acknowledgement. Go way beyond saying, hey, good job. Talk about why it was a good job. You will see that that will instill in people a greater sense of importance, and motivate them more, and greater performance on their job. Next slide. Okay, leadership roles. I think most of you know what the project manager does from a leadership perspective. We need to manage change effectively, and that's even in the adaptive world. Although change in the adaptive world certainly flows more freely, we need to make sure that we're making the right changes. Build the teams, create energized work environment. Always focus on improved quality. We can always do incremental improvement in quality, even if it's just a little bit, but we should look for how can we do it better next time. This will certainly help us to increase our competitive advantage. And by doing all of these things, you have a team creating value and producing these benefits that the stakeholders, the customers, would then realize, not only at the end of the project, but for the life of the product or service that's being offered. Next slide. Okay, now the question to ask here, okay, and this is, there's an actual exercise. We don't have time to get into the exercises, but ask yourself, is there a gap between what you actually do during each day as a leader and where you should be spending your time and energy? And an example of that would be if you are constantly clarifying information, okay, you got to ask yourself, why am I always clarifying information? Shouldn't I be doing something more about, helping people get the job done, motivating people, ensuring quality and things like that? So if you're spending a tremendous amount of energy clarifying or directing, got to ask yourself, what do I need to change in order to be much more effective as a leader? Are there things that are taking up too much of your time? If you're constantly explaining, we don't have time to do all that. So ask yourself, am I clear in my communications? Do people understand what I'm asking for? What's my behavior and how it's being perceived by other people? And then ask yourself, okay, what can I do to improve the timing and the balance of all of the things that I have to do? What are the behaviors that need to change in order for me to be a stronger leader? These are questions that you should ask yourself. The next slide. Okay, this is really important to stay on it without getting into a lot of detail, that everyone that is in a leader position should be a learner, a continuous learner. And I just to summarize, world-class learner equals world-class leader. Focus on your continuous personal and professional growth. It certainly helps your brand, but the key here is to make an investment in continuously growing and learning new things. It actually is amazing for you from a different perspective. You become more interesting. You learn a lot more. You get excited about things. It actually compels you to learn more. So become a world-class learner. Next slide. Okay, value-driven project leadership. Now, I think I might have mentioned this before, but Dr. Harold Kersner and I wrote a book called Value-Driven Project Management probably about 10 years ago. And we got pretty good attention and so on. And I see that today there's a lot more information about being value-driven. But value-driven leadership is being prepared for change and getting your team to be ready for change. It's making sure that your projects are aligned with the strategy and that you have some knowledge of the strategic direction and decisions being made by your organization, and that we are focusing our attention on outcome and impact over output. Okay, we produced the deliverable. Great. What's changed? What's better? What's been enhanced? What's been improved? Did we cut costs? Did we increase safety or something like that? So these are really important things from a value-driven leadership perspective. Okay, what we want to do is make sure that we are honest and we have integrity, and we have some empathy to our people. We care for the people, and actually that employee engagement and getting them to provide feedback will give us a better decision-making process. Next slide. Okay, results and value inseparable. Okay, we are constantly, should be, again, I'm talking from a predictive perspective here, that as you move from your project phase by phase by phase, look at the results. Are they satisfactory? Are they meeting the commitments and the performance that we had expected in each phase? Okay, we need to do that constantly so that we can really ensure that value is being created and that we are focusing towards providing something of high use and benefit to the people who are going to eventually receive the end of the project, whatever the deliverable might be. Okay, so we have outcome of action and behaviors that are going to produce output or impact. So this is something from a leadership perspective that, yes, we do need to measure our results. We have to ask ourselves, are these results acceptable and are they adding to the value that we're attempting to produce? And everyone at the beginning of the project should be aware of what is trying to be produced at the end of the project from a value perspective. Next slide. Okay, now there are 9 value postulates. I'm just going to go through them very, very quickly. Okay, I think you can assess the meanings for each one, but just as I read them, we'll just go through them real quick, okay? So next one up. Okay, it doesn't matter if you execute a project extremely well if you're working on the wrong project. This gets back to portfolio management. Let's make sure that the projects that we work on are the right projects. Okay, next one. Being on time and budget is not necessarily success. I know from previous experience that customers want the item that you're producing to work correctly, to help them with whatever their job is. And if it's late and maybe even if it's over budget, that may not matter so much as long as they got what they were looking for. Next one. Okay, and you can comment on any of these postulates if you want to add something to it. Completing a project within the triple constraint does not guarantee that the desired business value will be achieved. We were on time, we were in budget, and according to spec, and we can have an unhappy customer. So we got to go way beyond the triple constraint. Next slide. Okay, having a mature project management processes, including an enterprise project management methodology, and that would be maybe a PMO, an enterprise PMO, does not guarantee that business value will be there at project completion. And that is if we don't really understand why we are there in the first place. What is the value that we are attempting to produce, and does everybody know that? Okay, so having a methodology is one thing, but making sure that it's used correctly to produce the business value, that is the issue. Okay, next postulate. Price is what you pay, value is what you get. I mentioned this before. People, when they have value, never really discuss price. They only talk about what they got out of it and why they're happy with it and why they really enjoy having whatever this product or service is. Because that's really, really important. If you think about value, if people talk about things that they really like, they really never discuss price. Next postulate. Business value is what your customer perceives is worth paying for. Again, if you are producing value, if people are happy with whatever it is that you're producing, they are going to come back for more. And in many cases, and I think all of you know this from personal experience, that you will pay more when you are getting the value that you're looking for. Next postulate. Success is when business value is achieved. Okay, when you have defined value and people see it, they perceived it, and they can provide that feedback, now you have success. Next postulate. This is really important. Business value creates brand recognition. Okay, if you have a successful project and have produced value, now you have brand recognition. And that's significant because people will talk about it. You know, you have a brand, you know, like Apple is a good example of brand recognition. People go there because they really like that product and they will pay more. So business value creates brand recognition. It is a indication of success. Next postulate. Continued brand recognition is the driving force that produces greater value and stimulates new business. So if we have success, we now have brand recognition. If we have brand recognition, in order to sustain that, we need to continue to produce value, which means that we need to keep moving forward in a creative and innovative a way so that we can continue that cycle of success, brand recognition, and continued value. Next slide. Okay, so we're going to change the model. You can hit the next slide also. We're going from the traditional approach, which you're all familiar with, which is time, cost, and scope. Some call it the iron triangle, triple constraint. Okay, we're going to go to a different version called, and you'll notice that the outside triangle is value, quality, and image and reputation. How do we get that? Well, we get that by making sure that we produce the scope, that we handle cost and time and risk and so on to produce that output that becomes outcome and impact. And then when you have that, now you have this transformed approach, which is really enhancing value. Next slide. Keep going. Okay, so we're producing value. Now we have value metrics, okay, and these are things that maybe project managers don't see very often. Stakeholder and stockholder satisfaction, customer satisfaction, employee satisfaction. These are things that we can measure: brand loyalty, time to market, maintainability, reliability, availability, image and reputation, goodwill. All of these things are value metrics, not just KPIs or key performance indicators. Some of these are not easy to measure, but we need to factor them in, okay, especially in the areas of reliability, availability, image, goodwill, and social acceptability. These are factors that are going to have a profound impact on your organization. Next slide. Okay, now we're going to measure value. This is kind of the interesting part of this, and I know we're getting close to the time frame, but measuring value. Now let's take a look at this real quick. Okay, the performance, if it's very favorably exceeding the target, that means greater than 20% of target, then we have a value grade of superior. Okay, if you look at minus 20%, we have risk of project failure. That means that the value grade is urgent and we need to do something right away. You're going to create a disaster or a failed project. So we're grading things by giving performance measurements. For instance, plus 10% to 20%, we're exceeding target. That's good. Plus 10% to minus 10%, that's typically normal, and so on. So we can use that as a basis for measuring value. Next slide. Okay, now, if we have superior performance, again from the previous slide, we give a value of 4. Now, you can change the scale if you want to. This is pretty simple. Critical meaning that we're really in some serious trouble. But if you look at the bottom, those yellow items, performance target, the ROI is 5,000 US dollars. Actual ROI is 6,000. we exceeded the target by 20%. This project produced a superior result and got value points of 4 for superior performance. Another example, scheduled performance 12 months, actual completion 11.5, exceeded by the target by 5%. You get a value point of 2. Okay, next slide. You can see how this is going to develop. Okay, now, if we use our measuring system, okay, the weighting factor and value measurement are based on specific parameters. Okay, we have a value attribute quality. We have given that a weighting factor of 10%. Okay, quality is at 10% on weighting factor. Okay, and our value measurement is 3. Okay, if we look at our value score of 10% times 3, get a 0.3. You see that cost, which is a 20% weighting factor, has a value measurement of 1, meaning that we're probably maybe a little bit over budget. How about safety? Safety is 20%, and we give it a value measurement of 4. So we're doing really good on safety, and we get a value score of 0.8, and so on. Now you'll notice schedule was 20% on the weighting factor, and it's also a 1, meaning that we're kind of maybe a little bit behind schedule. So we get a 0.2. If we actually add up our value score, you get a 2.7, okay, which is indicating that your project actually overall from a value perspective is doing really well, even though we're not doing as great as we should be in the area of cost and schedule. Okay, so now we're really looking at value being produced in a bigger spectrum than simply looking at things like cost and schedule. Okay, and next slide. Can you see the value score 2 is acceptable, 2.7 more than acceptable, and note the low score for cost and schedule. Okay, so again, we're kind of showing here that cost and schedule might be important, but the bigger picture of perceived value, we need to look at that much more closely, that things like safety and features and quality were actually more important than cost and schedule. Next slide. Okay, now this is another item here, really, really quick. And if you have a chance, I'm imagining that you're going to be able to see these slides, or they'll be available for you to look at on your website. But we have success factors and we have stakeholders. And this is real generic, but if you look at the stakeholders, customers, end users, project manager, and so on, and then you look at the success factors, you will see that what is important to the customer, things like timely completion, requirements met, and quality and contract terms fulfilled, those would be checked off, but not necessarily things like whether or not you were on budget and whether you had profit realized. But if you look at the project manager, you could probably check off everything along the value expectations. So the point here is, let's make sure that we as project managers understand that value is going to be perceived very differently by every stakeholder that you're dealing with. And we need to have this much, much bigger picture in terms of leading the project and having that a consciousness of how value is perceived. Next slide. Okay, now another thing that's simple here would be have a dashboard, okay? And this is really quick. I'll go through this again really quick, but if you can hit the first slide, there's a couple of things that are going to build on here. Vital facts about the project. Okay, hit the advance. Okay, project objective, projected value, net present value, internal rate of return, payback, and so on. Go ahead, next one. Okay, the plan snapshot, what has been accomplished, what has been accepted. This is a question you may not ask, but you should ask. How is the customer perceiving the project while it's in progress? Okay, next one, keep going. Okay, are we assessing risks and issues? Are we producing and providing information about milestones? Are there any events that are impacting the project? Okay, things that are coming up. A very simple dashboard provides a lot of useful information that can be of value to your decision makers. And actually, these snapshots of the project allow us to make changes as we need in order to stay ahead of the game and manage these issues as they come up. Next slide. Keep going. Okay, now this is a great slide here, and this is actually from a different course that I have done for PMI in the past. It's called the 4-day MBA crash course, project management crash course. But real quick on this, if we're going to manage value, then we need to understand the relationship between the producer and the customer. And if you look at the gap number 1, okay, you'll see producer's perception of customers' expectations. That's us as project managers. Do we really have a clear understanding of what the customer expects? And my guess is that we might get close to it, but it's very, very difficult to actually read the customer's mind. That is our major gap that we need to understand, to try to close the gap between what we perceive to be what the customer wants and what the customer is actually expecting. And then you'll see that there are gaps from the product to the designer to delivery, and so on. This, to me, is a very important concept, something that should be talked about with the project teams and the functional groups that are actually producing the product of the project, to minimize those gaps. And there are multiple gaps. And these gaps, if not addressed, can create some severe problems at the end of the project. They can cause delays. They can cause customer dissatisfaction. They can even cause cancellation of projects. So focus on this gap model, the customer-supplier relationship, which is internal in any particular project. Okay, next slide. So focus on your priorities, which is a GAPS model. This was developed by an organization called Development First. And what we have here are goals and values, what matters to you, abilities, how you see yourself, okay, your skills, your talents, and so on. Okay, the perceptions, how do other people see you? And it's important to kind of get that feedback. And then success factors, what matters to you, matters to others. Okay, and you can do this at the project level, the individual level, or the organizational level. I mean, these are really important things to think about. Next slide. Okay, as we get close to the end here, I just wanted to put this up, the value of the law of connection. John C. Maxwell put this: you can't move people to action unless you first move them with emotion. So you, as the leader of the team, the project, you need to kind of create this excitement, this energy, this enthusiasm. And if you don't have that, it's very difficult to get anything done. So connect with people, talk to them, get feedback from them, provide feedback to them, encourage them, and acknowledge them. These are really important for creating stronger relationships with your teams. Next slide. Okay, as we close this out, these are basically, I've done a lot of checking on this, and these are the 20th century project manager skills. Knowledge of the business, we're going to call that business acumen. Interpersonal skills like negotiation and conflict management, communication. Quantitative skills, so we can actually measure how we're doing. Behavioral skills, which would be associated with emotional intelligence. Risk management, critically important. I think we need to see much more risk management focus in any particular project or in any organization. And integration skills, going to kind of pulling all the piece parts together to have a successful outcome. Next slide. Okay, so as we close out, my emphasis here has become a transformational project manager. Okay, if you look at the word transformer, tireless, resilient, aware, necessary, systematic, forward-thinking, observant, respectful, mindful, enthusiastic, and reflecting. That's the transformer part of transformational project manager. Next slide. Then we have project professional at all times, respect for all stakeholders, ownership of each assignment, judicial decision maker, excellence in execution, communicator, team player, and team builder. That's the project side of the transformational project manager. And the next slide. On the manager's side, motivator, action-oriented, negotiator, always available, genuine commitment, energetic and empowering, and responsible for success. That pulls together what we call the transformational project manager. Next slide. Okay, and then this last one here, go ahead and these are going to build. but I attended a PMI summit years ago, and Magic Johnson was the keynote speaker, and he offered some tips on leadership. So if you just kind of advance that, and you can see these leadership, be there first, attitude, I'm here to win, go to the next level, go for the championship, play against someone better than you, do a personal SWOT, a personal strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats analysis, network with a lot of people, understand your customer, get to know them really well, put your ego aside, uplift your brand, don't be satisfied, keep going. Give back. It's great to give back as a volunteer. Be demanding but fair. No clock watchers. And the last one, know your team. Very important things from a leadership perspective. I think by doing all of these things, you're going to produce greater value. You're going to have a value-driven project team. And I think that was the last slide. And I think if we have time for questions, now is the time. Okay, front-loaded phase metrics. Okay, let's make sure that we measure the right things, including our quality metrics. Let's have dashboards to get quick access to our status, secure knowledge management, and knowledge transfer. That's that power exchange that we talked about. Focus on excellence in execution. Planning is great, but we're going to be measured and perceived by our excellence in execution. Always emphasize professional and social responsibility, and that includes ethics and treating people well and so on. And you put all that together and you have value-driven project management. And with that, I think, go to the next slide. We should be at the end here. I think I might have run over a couple of minutes. Hopefully you enjoyed the session, got some value out of it. And if there's time, I'm certainly available for some questions.
So thank you very much, Frank, for this very inspiring presentation. I think we have all learned a lot from your experience and from your readings and from your different training with people. I think it's really, it was a really, I could not see if we have some question in the chat. I see that Robert kind of write some question or some remark. I don't know if Robert, you want to say a word.
Okay, I'm looking at Robert Snyder. He says a couple of things. I think generosity is a great starting point for conversations about work ethic, one-way accountability, two-way accountability, good enough to move on. You know, I'm not really in favor of the good enough. We have to do the best we possibly can in terms of our investments, working with employees, mentoring, and things like that. He said he likes the idea of partitioning these three things. I might be okay with someone's what, but I might strongly disagree with someone's why and how. Well, okay, that's up to you. The important thing is that people should know why they're doing something, okay? And I think that has been really emphasized with the younger generations, pretty much starting with the millennials and so on, that they're not necessarily interested in doing something without understanding, is there going to be some use or value out of this? And I think that's a good thing. So we should always be asking the why. Whether or not you agree with someone else's why, that's a whole different thing. But they understand why they're doing it. And I think that's the important thing. So for us as project managers, I think it's important for us to tell people why we're going to do this. We're doing this for these reasons. And I want you to get behind me on this. Okay. And then we can talk about the how. And the how would be sort of like an exchange between the leader and the team in terms of how we're going to do things, you know, from an ethical perspective and being responsible and so on. And then the what, again, is really more from the strategic perspectives of the organization, what it is that we do, okay? It's kind of related to our vision, mission, and objectives type of model. But the why is really important. Without understanding the why, you don't really get buy-in. And I think we need to understand that, okay? Any other questions?
Subrat, the statistic for failed project globally seems to be very high, somewhere around 60, 70. Would you like to throw some light on it? Thanks.
Okay, I've looked at that a lot in terms of 60 or 70%. I have to say that it really depends on what it is you're measuring, who's doing the measurement, and who is actually interpreting that information. I think that the actual success rate of projects is a lot higher than that. I don't think that businesses could sustain a 60, 70% success rate on projects. There are projects that fail. If we go back to the early 90s, like 1992, there was an organization called the Standish Group that they issued something called the Chaos Report. They focused mainly on IT type of projects, and they said that only that 25% of projects actually are successful. Okay, which when you start thinking about that, how is that possible? But if you really look at the data, and this was kind of a misinterpretation of data, is that there were 25% of projects that were truly successful in terms they met every single aspect and measurement of the project. But then there was another 50, 60% that actually crossed the finish line but did not fully meet all of the requirements, but they still were considered successful. So instead of 25%, we were talking more like 75, 80% successful and 25% total failures. So I think that every project that is produced will not have 100% completion of everything the way that was expected. It's probably going to be more like in the high 80s and low 90s. It's always going to be something that was missed. But if we really take a look at businesses wouldn't be able to survive if they were only 60% of their projects were successful. So I think that the numbers are a little bit different. I think that the perception and the interpretation of the numbers is also a factor. But taking all of that into consideration, and then there was an article put out by PMI in what they call the Pulse of the Profession, that the average companies projects were somewhere around 75, 80% with organizations that used a project management methodology. So 75, 80% were successful. That leaves 20% of the projects were not successful. And then we have to look at all the factors associated with that so that we can really understand, well, what happened, what failed. And a lot of the information is not provided. So I think that the jury is still out in terms of that success rate, because there's so many factors that have to be considered and so many stakeholders involved that I don't know that we'll ever get to 100%, but I think that the numbers are higher than 60 or 70 in terms of success.
Thank you very much, Frank, for these insights. What I would like to say as well, maybe I took some note actually during your presentation about what would be my takeaway from your presentation. And I moved recently to a more project portfolio point of view. So I see really the difference between the project. And I think your idea to kind of assess the value of the different projects at a portfolio perspective could really help, and to see what is a value which is brought to the by the different project, even though we are not necessarily totally on cost or on time. So I think that was really interesting. After, I really like what you said about to take the decision according to your own values. I think this is applicable only, I would say, if you respect the code of ethics of the PMI. and then I was really interested by your different profile of project or manager or team leader. And I really try to see where I'm positioned in that. I don't know if there is for you some of them which are more interesting, or you would say those type of character are really the one who performs the best?
Well, you mentioned a lot of takeaways, and you mentioned metrics and so on. I want to emphasize, you mentioned portfolio management. That's where you're kind of moving to. Those value metrics really need to be addressed in the early stages of project selection. When you're going through the pipeline, like we have project proposals that your organization's decision makers really need to assess. What are they assessing the projects on in terms of value, and make sure that as these decisions are being made, that we're focusing more on those value metrics, which in many cases are what we call intangibles. We need to look at the intangibles as opposed to just simply return on investment and money and so on. I think that that's really, really important. And that upfront assessment, when we start looking at value, is going to send a message to your entire organization that your leadership is really focused on doing the best possible job with the resources that we have, understanding capacity and so on. But the ultimate goal is to have a satisfied customer. So I think that all of that would be very motivational. I want to address, Subrat had a note that said, what are my thoughts on AI in project management? Okay, so lots of discussion about AI recently, and I've been talking to the experts and so on, and I have to say I have some reservations. So let's just see if I can summarize it. That AI is a tool, okay, and it can absolutely positively enhance the job of the project manager or anyone for that matter, if the tool is used correctly. It is not a substitute for thinking, okay? If you use AI properly, AI opens up all kinds of thoughts. It can increase your creativity and your ability to innovate, and by asking the right questions and then reviewing that information so that you can expand out what it is that you're trying to accomplish. So on that side, AI is great. Like I said, it can open up a whole lot of doors. It can make you think about things that you didn't think about before. Okay, that's the important side. We don't want it to take over and start thinking for us, or not thinking simply because we read something from AI. Pierre Lemon, the CEO of PMI, expressed his concern about AI in a LinkedIn post about 2 days ago. Okay, it is not a substitute for thinking. It is a tool to use to enhance thinking, okay, to enhance the way we get things done, to gather data more efficiently so that we can make better decisions. So on the other side of that, I'm writing an article that'll be published in the Project Management World Journal, and it's going to sound a little funny, but the title of the paper is called AI EIO, as in AI, artificial intelligence, EI as in emotional intelligence, and maybe we should be thinking about the combination of both. That AI is great, but let us not forget the human factor that's involved here. So we need a good balance of artificial intelligence as a tool to enhance our thinking, but at the same time, let's not forget about the human factor associated with project management, leading teams, creative thinking, innovation, critical thinking, all of those. We do not want AI to interfere with that. We want AI to enhance that. So Brad, I hope that answers your question to some extent. Okay, I know there's one other question here. Would you touch on the difference between project portfolio versus program management? Okay. I do a whole presentation on the whole process of portfolio management, but let's just say that portfolio management, which is more aligned with the strategic planning of an organization, that portfolio management would possibly be associated with picking the right programs that would then be managed by an organization. So portfolio management, and I'm going to make this very simple. Back in the 1980s, there was a person by the name of Philip Crosby, and he was a quality guru that kind of was sort of a maverick and not necessarily recognized by other people like Duran and Deming and so on. But he said something that was really interesting. He used these letters, which were D T R T R T F T, meaning do the right thing right the first time. Now, if we look at portfolio management using that, portfolio management is do the right thing, meaning let's pick the right projects. Let's select the right projects through appropriate justification and authorization that these projects or programs make the most sense for our organization in terms of our capacity and our resources and our ability to do this work. Okay, that's do the right thing. That is portfolio management. Doing it right the first time is project and program management, that we need to have methods in place that are consistent that will allow us to achieve the objectives of the project. So in simple terms, portfolio management is making the right selection of projects that the organization can work on. And we can't work on every single project. Let's work on the best ones, the ones that have the best impact to the organization. And then let's do them right through a program or project management methodology that would be consistent through the organization. So hopefully that answers that question. Okay. Any other questions that we can address before we close out?
So if not, I will request maybe 2 minutes for the closing. So if there is no further question, but thank you very much, Frank, for, I think it brought a lot of interest, your presentation. We had a lot of question. Thank you, Ahmed and Subrat, for your question. Do not hesitate to connect with Frank on LinkedIn if you have any question to him. So before closing, I will just address the next event. So we have a roundtable next week. So if you are in Darmstadt or nearby, feel free to join. So Almira will be there, so do not hesitate to come. So we will be a little team to connect. Then we have 2 online events. So one on the 25th of September by Laura Powers, and one on the 8th of October by Phil Driver. And by the end of October as well, we have 24th of October, there is a roundtable in Heidelberg, so you are welcome to join. And on the 27th, we have as well a roundtable in Darmstadt. And then already we have some event for November on the 30th of October with Stefan Miteski from North Macedonia. And on the 5th of November, we have as well about AI, so Markus Knopoko. So do not hesitate to join. And you can always contact us if you have any question. So we are 7 members from 6 countries. So Thomas, myself, Mohammad, Tufik, Olia, Maria, and Almira. So feel free to join us and to connect. We will be happy to do so. And before closing, I would like to thank a lot, Frank, for your presentation. It was really inspiring. And I think everybody had a very good moment. And thank you for your time. And I'm just copying as well on the chat the PDU code for all of you. So thank you very much.
Okay, thank you for inviting me. I hope that you all enjoyed the session. I put my email in the chat if anybody has any additional questions or comments or suggestions for me. I'm happy to hear from you. And Ahmed, I didn't answer your question, but I can send you some information about capacity planning and resource management that would probably answer your question. So if you have an opportunity, you can send me a note via LinkedIn or email. I'll be happy to share that with you, and it's very enlightening information.
Thank you